All right, guys. So AOC. Okay, and guys, honestly, I struggle when I'm talking about AOC because on one hand, I probably should not really be talking about her. And I think people talk about her more than she should because she's irrelevant from a policy perspective. She has no power in Washington, D.C. when it comes to actually getting any policy passed. Matter of fact, she's one of the least effective members of the House. But what I've come to realize is that while at the same time being one of the most least effective policymakers, she is probably the best Democrat when it comes to actually fighting the culture war. Okay, when it comes to pushing for Democrat agendas and pushing the Democrat narrative, particularly against conservatives, she is probably the Democrats' most valuable weapon, okay? Because she has the ability to use her emotions to influence how people think about certain situations and certain narratives. And guys, she's mastered the ability to do this. To me, I'm not even the type of person where, I deny AOC's emotions. I don't deny them, okay? I just think it's convenient when they come out in full force, because every time she goes out here and she plays this victim card, it always seems to be when the Democrats are trying to pass some type of policy that is going to hurt Republicans and conservatives. And this time she comes out during a convenient time in which, the Democrats are trying to pass this January 6th commission. And then she's talking about how she is still traumatized from January 6th and how she's been seeing a therapist regarding this issue. Take a listen.
I think after the 6th, I took some time, and it was really Ayanna Pressley when I explained to her what had happened to me, like the day of, because I ran to her office, and she was like, you need to recognize trauma and that this is something that you went through, but we're all going through. And it's really important to pause after that, because that's how you process it. And I feel like I learned this the hard way after my father had passed away when I was a teenager, because I was like, firstborn, only daughter of a Latina family. You know how that dynamic is, and you need to do everything. So that happened to me at a young age, and I socked it away. And I had to live with that for years. And so I learned my lesson then. And now I feel like I've had to take a beat. If I take a couple months now and just be really good, then I don't have to live with this thing festering and lingering with me like a roommate in my apartment for years.
So you're doing therapy?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm doing therapy, but also I've just slowed down. I think the Trump administration had a lot of us, especially Latino communities, in a very reactive mode. And so I've been putting myself in a more proactive space.
Like I told you guys, I'm not the one to deny that AOC feels the way she feels. Okay, she was in a vicinity that day. She wasn't at the Capitol, like in the building, but she was in the vicinity. I can understand why she would feel afraid. Okay, and I want to be careful because I don't want to diminish how she may or may not feel. But if you're so traumatized, why is it that you need somebody else to tell you that you're traumatized? If I went through a tragedy, I don't need somebody else to tell me that I'm traumatized or that I went through a tragedy. I would know what I'm going through. I don't need nobody else to tell me that. Like I said, it's very convenient for these emotions to always come out when the Democrats need it the most. Okay? For example, when this whole thing first happened, right? AOC, Democrats, the squad, when the Democrats were trying to impeach Trump, not only were they trying to impeach Trump, they were also trying to remove a ton of GOP members in the House. They were basically trying to remove anybody in the House that contest the Electoral College votes. They wanted to remove those people, right? They said they're insurrectionists. And AOC went out there, again, she was the ringleader on this, saying that, I don't feel safe being in the House with Republicans. I don't feel safe being around gun-toting, law-abiding American citizens. Okay? That's what she said. And what she's doing is that she's painting the Republicans in the GOP as inherently dangerous, even though none of them were a part of that mob. None of them were a part of it. But for whatever reason, AOC tried to paint the narrative that they are dangerous people who must be kicked out of Congress. Again, keep in mind, this is when they were trying to drum up support for the impeachment trial of President Trump. This is also when the progressives were pushing for the expulsion of GOP House members. And specifically, they was targeting Marjorie Taylor Greene. Okay, this all was a part of the Democrat agenda to make the GOP look bad. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is, again, the perfect emotional attack dog for that type of situation. And then also, y'all, you remember Nancy Pelosi put in a policy of having more metal detectors in Congress before members can get on the floor. At that same time, AOC goes out there and basically tries to advocate for the members of Congress to have their Second Amendment rights stripped from them because she feels scared. Ain't that crazy how that works? Not only that, around the time in which the Trump impeachment trial was taking place, AOC comes out and now she starts to tell her story in more detail about how, you know, she had to leave the building. She had to evacuate, how the police came to get her. And, you know, she thought the police may have been a rioter, you know, yada, yada, yada. We all know the story. That came out about around the time that they were actually doing the trial. Now, all of a sudden, the January 6th commission is on the floor. It's trying to be passed by the Democrats, which, again, all it is just a way for them to continue to demonize the GOP, to keep talking about it. Now she's out here talking about how traumatized she still is and that she's receiving therapy. Guys, I don't think this is a coincidence. I really don't. And I don't think it's one of those things that AOC is conscious that she's being used by the Democrat Party. She doesn't realize that she's being used by the Democrats to pass legislation and to do things against the GOP that have nothing to do with why she's actually in Congress or the reason she says she's in Congress. AOC is supposed to be a progressive. She's not a Democrat. And like I already told you guys, she's one of the most least effective policymakers in the House. So that means that whatever legislation that she writes, it will never get considered. The Democrats aren't even thinking about her agenda, okay? But she is very valuable to the Democrats for raising money and attacking the GOP. And she'll go out there and sing that tune anytime they need it. But she can't get any legislation passed. I wonder, does she realize what's going on here? Because to me, you know, I'm not saying that she wasn't traumatized. I'm not saying that she doesn't need therapy. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying, why do you have to continue to make this stuff public at the most convenient time? Why do you have to continue to do this? Because the Democrats don't care about AOC. They don't. Nancy Pelosi couldn't even remember AOC's name, could barely remember AOC's name when discussing the incident between AOC and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And guys, that incident between AOC and Marjorie Taylor Greene asked AOC for a debate. AOC, assuming, said yes. And I hope Marjorie Taylor Greene went lie that AOC said yes, but also at the same time, AOC never came out and denied it. AOC was aware that Marjorie Taylor Greene asked for a debate and was also telling the public that AOC accepted, but she never denied it. And like anybody else, Marjorie Taylor Greene went up to AOC and was like, hey, when are we going to debate? When are we going to make it happen? And then AOC plays the victim card. She plays the victim card. Now Nancy Pelosi is using AOC's victim card to now say, oh, we need to open up an ethics committee to investigate Marjorie Taylor Greene and other GOP Republicans. Again, it's like I said, the only thing AOC is effective at is going after the Republicans. That's it. That's it. And again, during that same press conference that Nancy Pelosi gave, because of AOC, she couldn't even remember AOC's name. AOC doesn't even realize she's being used. Her emotions are being used by the Democrats just to attack the GOP, do their dirty work. But none of the progressive legislation that she's in Congress to pass will ever get passed because she's more focused on going after the GOP and being traumatized than she is actually trying to learn how to be an effective legislator. It's really crazy how it works, man. And it's not like I'm mad that AOC is incompetent, but I am frustrated because AOC's emotions are an effective weapon when it comes to demonizing people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, when it comes to demonizing the GOP, because, again, emotions sway public opinion. When somebody says they're traumatized, when somebody says they're hurt and that they're still feeling the effects of what happened at the Capitol, it continues to try to ingrain this idea that what happened that day was one of the worst things that happened in American history, right? They're trying to compare it to 9/11, guys. That's what they're trying to do. And they're trying to use it to forever hurt the GOP, the conservative movement, and President Trump. That's what they're doing. And AOC is so effective at that, but it's almost like she doesn't even realize that she's not getting anything out of it. So, I don't know, man. I just find this interesting how she always comes out with this stuff at the most convenient times, but who knows? It is what it is. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.